On Friday, April 13, 2012, married Brittany Kilgore stepped out of her apartment wearing a red evening dress. She got into the car of a little-known man and went with him on a dinner cruise in San Diego, California. 10 minutes later, she sent a message with just one word: help. None of her close ones could fathom where the young woman had been taken. Brittany Kilgore, 22, was born and raised in the small town of Rolla, with a population of only 20,000 people in the state of Missouri. She grew up as an attractive, intelligent girl but was very shy, quiet, lacking in confidence, and spent most of her time alone at home. At the age of 19, Brittany met her first love, Corey Kilgore, a Marine Corps corporal. Her parents did not expect their reserved daughter to start a relationship so quickly, but at the same time, they were pleased that Brittany became more open and spent more time outside the house. Just 2 months after the start of their relationship, the couple talked about marriage. They got married on July 17, 2010. Brittany was radiant on that special day and genuinely happy. Shortly after the wedding, the newlyweds moved to Fallbrook, California, near the Camp Pendleton Marine Corps base, where Corey Kilgore was stationed. Brittany's parents were reluctant to let their daughter go so far, but knowing that the young family would live near the military base, they were reassured, believing that Brittany would be safe there. The young woman had long dreamed of leaving her parents' home, escaping their constant control, and finally starting adult life. The young couple lived together, enjoying each other's company for the first few months. They made grand plans for the future, and on weekends, they explored the city, getting to know its landmarks. However, after a year of official relations and living far from their families, problems began to arise in their marriage. Brittany often complained to her husband that she felt isolated and lonely, with few friends and no job. Another year passed, and in 2012, Brittany declared that she rushed into marriage, wanted a divorce, and planned to move back to the town of Rolla, Missouri, where her parents and friends were. On April 10, 2012, while Corey Kilgore was on a deployment in Afghanistan, Brittany filed for divorce. She began packing her things and had already bought a plane ticket for April 18 to return home. She didn't want to meet with her husband and was afraid he would talk her out of moving. At the same time, Brittany didn't want to return to her parents' home, where she faced constant control and criticism. She understood this, but didn't have the money to live on her own. On Friday the 13th of April, during the day, Brittany was in their rented apartment with her husband, packing for the move. Suddenly, she heard a knock on the door. Opening the lock, she saw a man she had previously met on the military base, but didn't know his name. It was 47-year-old Luis Perez, a senior Marine Corps sergeant serving at the same base as Brittany's husband. The man invited her to join him for dinner on a hornblower cruise in San Diego, located 40 minutes away from the Kilgore home. Brittany responded, "No, I don't want to go anywhere with you. I'm moving soon and packing my things." Persistent Luis promised to help her with the move if she had dinner with him. She continued to refuse the insistent conversation. Brittany felt uncomfortable communicating with the unfamiliar man. She didn't want to go on a date and was worried about what her husband's colleagues would think if she agreed. Luis Perez repeatedly offered assistance to Brittany. He promised to send some Marines to help her get to the airport with heavy bags. Brittany refused again and closed the door. After some time, the phone rang in the girl's apartment. She picked up the receiver and heard the voice of an unfamiliar woman. It was a call from 36-year-old Dorothy Marilino, who was Luis Perez's lover and pregnant with his child. She said, "I don't mind if you go to dinner with my Luis. I need to take care of some things, and besides, I'm not feeling well, I'm nauseous. Can you go on this cruise with Luis instead of me, keep him company?" After Dorothy's call, Brittany calmed down and agreed to go to dinner. She couldn't imagine what would come out of her meeting with the unfamiliar man, who was 25 years older than her. On the evening of April 13th at 7:40 p.m., Luis Perez arrived at Brittany Kilgore's house in his white SUV. Seeing the man, the girl went down, got into the car, and they drove away together. 10 minutes after Brittany got into the car, at 7:50 p.m., she sent a message to her friend saying, "Help." It was the last time the girl made contact. Then, she simply disappeared. The next day, on Saturday, April 14th, Brittany's mom called her, but she didn't answer. The woman waited for her daughter to call back, seeing the missed call from her mother, but the phone remained silent. So the woman decided to call Brittany again, and this time, a man answered, saying he found the mobile phone in downtown San Diego. It later turned out that a homeless man found the phone near a restaurant called Girl with the Whiskey and handed it over to law enforcement. Brittany's mother urgently called Brittany's friends and learned that the previous evening her daughter had gone to dinner with Luis Perez. The woman found out his number and contacted him, saying, "Hello, I'm Brittany's mom, and you were supposed to go on a cruise with my daughter last night. She didn't come home. Where's my daughter?" Luis calmly replied that they didn't go on any cruise. He claimed that he had picked up Brittany in his car in the evening and they went to have dinner at one of the restaurants in San Diego. Luis insisted that he dropped Brittany off at the entrance of the establishment. She got out, and he went to find a parking spot. The man was gone for about 10 to 15 minutes, and when he returned, Brittany was nowhere to be found. He concluded that the young girl must have met someone near the restaurant and escaped from the admirer who seemed like a father figure to her. This story seemed very strange to Brittany's mother. She knew very well that her daughter wasn't a partygoer and wouldn't go anywhere with unknown guys. The woman hung up and told her husband that she felt like this Luis Perez had done something bad to their daughter. Meanwhile, concerned friends of Brittany called the local sheriff and reported the girl missing. Sheriff's deputies located Luis Perez and asked him to come in for questioning. The 47-year-old man, who had served in the Marine Corps for about 16 years, didn't have an exemplary record, no commendations, and didn't show much effort at work. At the station, the man repeated the story that he picked up Brittany, drove her to a restaurant 40 minutes away from Kilgore's home, and after that, she disappeared. Luis looked into the restaurant through the glass facade but didn't find anyone. He thought Brittany had ditched him and went off to relax with another man. Outside the police station, officers examined Luis's SUV and noticed a black box in the cargo area. They asked him to open it, and inside, there was a semi-automatic rifle. Upon further investigation, it turned out that the weapon was stolen and was part of a separate case. Luis Perez was arrested and placed in custody. Investigators named him a person of interest in the case of Brittany Kilgore's disappearance, but initially, he wasn't charged in connection with the girl's disappearance. Meanwhile, it had been 23 hours since Brittany Kilgore was last seen near her home. The Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS, joined the investigation. Family and friends actively searched for the girl, praying for her safety. The media also got involved, spreading information about the missing person through various channels. They plastered flyers around the city, drove through the streets day and night, shouting the girl's name. The case took a turn when 36-year-old Dorothy Marilino, who had a relationship with Luis Perez, contacted a maritime police agent. She revealed some of her man's secret interests. It turned out that Luis Perez was deeply involved in BDSM, bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, sadism, and masochism, role-playing in the bedroom, where one partner gives instructions and the other strictly obeys. Dorothy described some moments from their personal life and explained that Luis deliberately sought out women with low self-esteem and marital problems. He showered such women with compliments and attention, then coerced them into playing role-playing games from which he derived pleasure. Dorothy admitted that once Luis made her undress completely and sit in the back seat of his car. He drove her to his workplace at Camp Pendleton Military Base. Luis parked the car in the lot, and Dorothy hid inside, spending 5 hours there, hesitating to climb out through the roof hatch of the SUV. It soon became apparent that these were not the only secrets Luis had. He had been officially married for about 15 years and was raising a daughter. His family lived in a house near the military base. In Fallbrook, he was involved with Dorothy Marilino, who was pregnant with his child and waiting for her daughter. Luis often spent the night at his mistress's place but showed no hurry to leave his wife. Sheriff's deputies obtained a search warrant for 2 of his residences. Early on Sunday, April 15th, agents searched Dorothy Marolino's home. As they entered, the first thing that caught their attention was a multitude of adult play items. It became clear what the man and woman in this house were involved in. On the same day, it was revealed that another woman, 26-year-old Jessica Lopez, was living in the basement of Dorothy's residence. In the basement, they discovered a secret dungeon containing whips, a baton, sticky tape, knives, and various toys for carnal pleasures. Luis, Dorothy, and Jessica lived together in this house and were in unconventional relationships with each other. Luis considered himself the master and the main decision-maker in their non-traditional family. Dorothy was his favorite woman, while Jessica occupied the lowest rung of the hierarchy. It's important to understand that all this was not just a hobby or a pastime. The women lived in fear and were afraid to make a mistake in relation to Luis, knowing that disobedience could lead to something bad. At that time, Luis Perez was still behind bars for the case of possessing stolen weapons. Police checked his mobile phone and Brittany's phone. They found out that on April 13th, the girl didn't leave her town until 9:20 p.m. She was in Dorothy's house. After 9 in the evening, Luis Perez took his phone and Brittany's phone and drove them to San Diego to create an alibi, making it seem like Brittany had indeed disappeared near the restaurant. He left her phone on the street in a prominent place to be quickly found, making it look like the girl was abducted in downtown San Diego. Then Luis returned to Fallbrook. Over the next few days, the police, along with search and rescue units from the San Diego Sheriff's Department, as well as numerous volunteers, helicopter, and canine units, conducted searches over a fairly extensive area in hopes of finding Brittany Kilgore alive. San Diego sheriffs obtained a warrant for a thorough search of Luis Perez's vehicle. Important evidence they found in the cargo area of the white Ford Explorer included gloves and bags with Brittany Kilgore's blood. Additionally, police found an electroshock baton in Luis's car, with Perez's DNA traces on its handle, while Kilgore's DNA was found on the electrified prongs. This indicated that at some point, the man used a stun gun either to subdue or inflict pain on the girl after she got into his car. At the moment Brittany sent a message to her friend with the word help, Luis was driving her to the house of his lover, Dorothy Marolino, located on the hillside. The driveway curved around the entire house, extending to the rear of the yard and hiding behind the house. It would have been very easy for Luis to drive his SUV along this driveway and discreetly bring Brittany to the basement where their secret dungeon was located. Meanwhile, a team of forensic experts was sent to Dorothy's house for research. However, by that time, Dorothy and Jessica had disappeared. The experts seized computers, storage devices, as well as some records and diaries of the women. The police began to search for the fugitives Dorothy and Jessica and found out that they had checked into a hotel near the San Diego airport. Police officers arrived at the hotel and went to the designated room, knocked on the door, but there was no response. The agents hoped to find Brittany alive, but what they discovered in room 105 was a big shock for them. Opening the door with a key, the police entered and found a woman lying on the floor, bleeding. It turned out to be not Brittany but Jessica Lopez. She was all cut up, and they rushed her to the hospital. The police inspected the hotel room, and in the bathroom, they noticed a mirror next to which there was a hanger with a piece of paper saying "Pigs, read this." Below the inscription, there was an envelope with a 7-page letter that completely shifted the investigation in a different direction. It was a posthumous note written by Jessica Lopez, describing the events of April 13th and taking all the blame upon herself. She confessed that she pushed Brittany down the stairs, used a stun gun, and then strangled the girl, first with a rope and then with a pillow. In the letter, Jessica wrote that she did it for Luis, fearing that Brittany would escape from him, and he would be very angry. Then she tried to dismember the body, but she failed. Afterward, she took Brittany to the Skinner Reservoir area in Southern California and dumped her there. 26-year-old Jessica Lopez, who had not been significant in the investigation up to that point, now became the main suspect, attempting to voluntarily end her life by taking full responsibility. Police rushed to Skinner Reservoir, as indicated by Jessica. They found the naked body of a woman lying outdoors for several days. It took some time to identify her. Brittany's parents prayed that it wasn't their daughter, but their fears were soon confirmed. On the inner side of Brittany's left wrist, there was a tattoo with the name of her grandmother, Helen, which she got before getting married. It was this tattoo that helped identify the body of 22-year-old Kilgore. By that time, Brittany's husband, Corey Kilgore, had arrived from Afghanistan to participate in the search for his wife. He arrived late and was shocked by the terrible news of what had happened to his beloved wife. On May 8, 2012, Brittany Kilgore was buried in her hometown of Rolla, Missouri, next to her beloved grandmother, Helen. Meanwhile, the agents of the Maritime Police continued their investigation. It turned out that Louise, Dorothy, and Jessica were not the only ones leading such an unconventional lifestyle. Families like theirs existed from Los Angeles to San Diego, and only trusted individuals who knew a specific set of special words could enter them. They had an online community where they communicated with each other and shared details of their favorite games. Shortly before Brittany's disappearance, Luis Perez boasted to his so-called gaming colleagues that he had planned an insane party for April 14th. With each passing time, their games became more and more brutal. Like any addicts, they always wanted more. By killing Brittany, they sought an adrenaline rush that they probably hadn't felt in years. On Friday, April 13th, Jessica Lopez celebrated her birthday. The crime was meticulously planned. They abducted the young girl, brought her to their house, and then realized their horrifying fantasies. It's difficult to describe everything Brittany Kilgore went through. One thing is certain, in the last minutes of her life, she experienced true agony. When Jessica Lopez was discharged from the hospital, she was immediately arrested and placed in custody, charged with murder. At that time, Dorothy Marilino remained free as the police tried to link her to the case. Dorothy Marilino was obsessed with control, and her house was covered in writings and stickers. Even the toilet paper had instructions on how to use it. Jessica Lopez completely obeyed and followed Dorothy. Reviewing surveillance footage from the hotel where Jessica last stayed, the police learned that at that moment, she was in the room with Dorothy. Cameras captured the moment when Dorothy left the room, then returned with a notepad and pen. The women wrote a letter together. Based on this, investigators developed a theory that Dorothy Marilino was the mastermind behind Brittany's murder, and Jessica obeyed her in everything. Police located Dorothy, who was by then in Virginia. They called her on the phone and began asking for details about the night Brittany died. Dorothy boldly claimed she hadn't seen Brittany in her house, and her response would remain unchanged, no matter how many times they asked about the deceased girl. A detective flew to Virginia to talk to Dorothy, but she refused to meet. After that, she tried to go out as little as possible, stopped using her phone, email, and even refrained from credit card transactions, making it very difficult for detectives to trace her. Finally, one of the Maritime Police agents learned Dorothy Marilino's location. She had been staying in a hotel near San Diego Airport for a week. Soon, an agent checked into the same hotel under a false name, with his room directly opposite Dorothy's. He observed her room for a week, and she almost never left. Police officers were stationed near the hotel in case Dorothy decided to leave and go somewhere. While the Maritime Police kept an eye on the woman, the Sheriff's Department continued its investigation into the Kilgore case. Eventually, the district attorney's office charged Dorothy Marilino with the murder of Brittany Kilgore, and she was arrested and placed in custody. At that time, she was 7 months pregnant, and she gave birth in prison, but her newborn daughter was immediately taken away. Now all three suspects, Luis Perez, Dorothy Marilino, and Jessica Lopez, were behind bars. All three were accused of the kidnapping and murder of the young girl. None of them admitted guilt. In September 2015, the trial for Brittany Kilgore began in San Diego County, where all three defendants were tried together, each with their own personal lawyer. It became clear to the jury that there was an attempt to drag Brittany into Luis Perez's white Ford Explorer. There was never any intention to spend time cruising with the girl for Luis Perez. All that needed to be proven was the existence of a conspiracy and a plan to abduct Brittany, and everyone involved in this action shared responsibility for the resulting murder. The trial presented physical evidence linking the defendants to the victim. According to investigators, the crime scene was Perez's house in Fallbrook, where Sergeant Luis Perez brought the defenseless girl and took her to the basement where a special room for so-called games was located. Traces of blood and the victim's hair were found on some items inside. The prosecution claimed that the defendants' actions were a product of their sick fantasies, and they had simply gone too far in their games, reaching a level that was not only dangerous but also deadly. The defense had its version of events. Marilino's lawyer argued that Dorothy was asleep at the time of the crime, and she maintained until the end that she didn't know who killed Brittany, but it certainly wasn't her. Perez's lawyer claimed that Luis went outside to get some fresh air and smoke during the crime, and he was also unaware of what was happening inside the house. When he returned, he saw Jessica sitting next to Brittany's lifeless body. Luis became the one who pointed fingers at Jessica Lopez and blamed her for everything. However, Jessica confessed that Luis and Dorothy forced her to write a confession letter and take the blame. She claimed she was just following their orders and had no idea what was happening. During the trial, she called herself a fool and stated that she hadn't done anything wrong to Brittany, she hadn't even touched the poor girl. Jessica said she knew nothing about the tragedy in their home. Throughout the trial, Brittany Kilgore's parents were present, forced to hear the truth about what happened to their beloved daughter in the last minutes of her life. Witnesses from the BDSM community testified that they had heard fantasies about abductions and crimes from this trio. During the trial, it was revealed that all three suspects had once invited a fourth woman to their home and made her participate in their games. That incident ended peacefully because the woman showed compliance. Investigators believed that Brittany refused to participate in the games, leading to her paying with her life. In 2016, all three were found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. They will spend the rest of their lives behind bars and will never be released. Brittany Kilgore's mother confessed, "I pray every day that the guilty people suffer and are unhappy. Perhaps my daughter's story will warn someone and save them, then I will understand that all this was not in vain." While in prison, Dorothy Marilino discovered her writing talents and released a book titled My Inner Voice. It is available for reading on American online platforms for just $15. In the book, Dorothy writes about her lonely life in the cell, far from family, friends, and loved ones, recalling moments from her past life, experiencing both joy and sorrow. The book also includes her poems and short stories. Thank you for watching this video. Please rate it and share your thoughts in the comments. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.